Okay, welcome everyone. I think we are starting now. And the webinar is recorded. Yes. So our warmest welcome to everyone joining the Circular Turku Roadmap introduction webinar today. Samia, please next slide. It slowly moves on, but hoping that the techniques will work. Okay, now you all see the next slide. Yes, and welcome virtually to Turku, which is the oldest and oldest city of Finland. My name is Minna Arve, and I'm from the City of Turku's Climate and Environmental Policy Unit, and I'm the project manager in Circular Turku. This webinar is arranged in cooperation with our partners and collaborators in Circular Turku, which are ICLEI, Wallonia, Turku Science Park, and Turku Energia today. So here we see our agenda today. And for the start, we will hear the welcoming remarks from the city mayor, Minna Arve. And after that, we will present Circular Turku as Mr. Weibo, the director of the Climate and Environmental Policy Unit. And also I will be presenting you why Turku focuses on circularity and how it may serve as a means to achieve climate neutrality. And in the second part of the webinar, we have many interesting presentations from our collaborators and partners in Circular Turku who will walk us through the 5 priority topics of the roadmap and one overarching theme focusing on lifestyles. Then we move forward to presenting the social equity approach to the circular economy, and Mr. Makasen Naidu from ICLEI will share Turku's learnings how we share Turku's learnings internationally. The last part of the webinar, the questions and answers, is reserved for discussion. And there, please, if you find the Q&A box from the Zoom, please share your questions and comments there, because we have plenty of time, I hope, in the end to go through your thoughts together and discuss the things. And I would also like to remind us all to keep the microphones muted and the video off until the session in the very end if we speak there. The next slide, please. Thank you. You can also have the next one. Then let's begin the journey with the Circular Turku roadmap. I give the floor to the mayor of Turku, Minna Arve, and Samira, could you please share the video? Thank you.
Welcome to the first Circular Turku webinar, brought to you by ICLEI Circulars. I'm Minna Arve, Mayor of the City of Turku in Finland. We are proud to share with you learnings from Turku on bringing the circular economy to the city level. I would like to start by telling you why we started focusing on the circular economy. Our circular economy efforts are closely linked to our climate ambitions. In 2018, the City Council of Turku unanimously approved the target that the city will become carbon neutral by 2029 in time for its 800th anniversary. Thanks to large investments in renewable energy and electric public transport, we have already halved our emissions compared to 1990 level. However, to decrease the remaining emissions, we need a radical transformation of how we produce and consume. Almost half of the emissions in our current economic system are generated by how we make and use products and how we produce food. The way we make products and food is linear. We extract vast amounts of natural resources to manufacture them into products and infrastructure that will be used only once, in 91% of the time before being discarded and becoming waste. We can't afford a linear economy in a world with finite resources and rising GHG emissions. To address emissions in a holistic manner and support vibrant local economies, Turku is committed to support the transition to a circular economy with zero waste and a low ecological footprint by 2040 at the latest. Through the Circular Turku project, Turku has developed a roadmap that aims to leverage city resources to do just that. From local businesses to research institutions, public companies to national and regional actors, more than 200 stakeholders were involved in consultations to define the circular economy interventions included in the roadmap. A lot can be learned from this exercise, and we are excited to present the results to you today. In my role as global representative for circular development within the ICLEI network, I hope Turku's experiences can inspire other local governments around the world to kickstart their circular economy transition. Thank you for your interest in Turku's work and enjoy today's webinar.
Yes, great to be back. Thank you. And next we will hear how that circularity can serve as a means to achieve climate neutrality. Please, Risto, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good morning, good afternoon, good midday, depending on where you are following the seminar from. My name is Risto Veivo. I'm climate director at the City of Turku, and please put on the next slide. We have achieved great reductions of emissions in Turku during the last 10 years mainly. From the top level, we have reduced the regional emissions by 60% already, and from the baseline year 1990, by last year already by 55% actually. Like the mayor said, most of these reductions are thanks to energy transition from fossil fuels to renewables, a transition that will see an important milestone this year when the use of fossil coal will be completely ended in Turku area. However, to reach real carbon neutrality and to make a full contribution to climate responsibility globally, we need to put focus on the consumption-based emissions. For the first time, in cooperation between 14 cities and expert organizations in Finland, we had the consumption-based emissions, the so-called carbon footprint of Turku, the whole society in Turku, calculated, and our emissions are per person 8.4 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. And most of this comes from energy consumption and construction, but food and goods and services and mobility are major sources as well. And we really need to address these sectors, these consumption-based emissions, and circular economy is the way to do that. It's the way to decarbonize the economy and to decarbonize daily life in cooperation with citizens, actually. Next slide, please. So in order to address these consumption-based emissions in a systemic way, we need to target the different steps of the value chains, and we are looking at the whole chains of linear economy in order to apply circular models and to change actually the whole linear paradigm. And we have a concept of the 3 R's. So before we use resources, we rethink whether new resources are actually needed, whether we can regenerate resources, whether we can base the take on a renewable system. Second, when we are making products and services out of materials, before we make, we design in a way that reduces the material consumption and the emissions that are incorporated in the materials and in their production, and how we can reuse materials that are already in circulation. And once production has taken place and materials and services are being used, we're looking at recovery, the ways how we can recover resources so that they would not actually have an end of life. In EU, for last decade, we have talked about the end of waste, and that's the idea here. And we are applying these 3 R's to the value chains in 5 different priority topics in Turku, and I believe that next you will be learning more about these. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Risto. Thank you for sharing and enlightening the climate target and the emissions that we have, and the systemic approach to circularity. It's indeed needed. Next slide, please. Okay, well, next we will move on to sharing some examples of the existing good practices in Turku. Next slide, please. The first one is the wastewater treatment plant that serves 14 municipalities in Turku region. And the heat from the wastewater is directed to the plant is recovered with the heat pumps and used for district heating. And the sludge is transported to the nearby biogas plant to produce biogas that can be used for traffic, for example. And also the sludge can be composted to give very nutritious humus for landscaping, for example. And the treatment makes sure that the nutrients in the water don't end up in the Baltic Sea. Therefore, we have the archipelago picture here. So it's a very holistic approach, taking care of multiple aspects. Thank you. The next slide. Another example is the recycling of textiles. And as you know, the textile industry is a very significant driver to biodiversity loss all across the value chain. And even so, we produce masses of textile waste. For example, in Finnish households, it's approximately 13 kilograms per person per year. And the City of Turku, who is owning the waste management company LSJH with 17 neighboring municipalities, the company is taking also a very holistic approach to waste management in overall, and they invest in research and development to increase the value of recycling. And the textile waste, it's collected and then sorted according to the different fiber categories. And for LSJH company, the one flagship project is the successful development of a processing facility, which has a mechanical fiber opening line with infrared technology to identify different types of fibers. And this processing is piloted in Paimio, a neighboring municipality of Turku, and the full-scale end-of-life textile refinement plant will be opened later in 2025. And this will treat all the textile waste in Finland that comes from the households. Next slide. Then we take a look at the Smart Chemistry Park, which represents an industrial symbiosis to redesign the chemistry sector. In Smart Chemistry Park, it's a platform that supports innovative circular economy solutions for high-value materials. And It offers especially small businesses an access to networks with universities and businesses and other collaborators, for example, from the public sectors, and facilitates the funding, and of course the collaboration itself is a huge value. And in the core of the business model, it's the reuse of industrial waste streams, which these companies can access from the surrounding industrial zone. For example, one company, Chrysoltech, is specialized in recovering metal resources like nickel, chromium, and iron from industrial processes, which then means we don't need so much virgin metals if we can recover them better. Thank you. The next slide, please. And finally, an example of supporting circular food systems through the public procurement. The City of Turku is currently working on decreasing the life cycle carbon impacts of the food contracts. The public tenders are managed by the Strategic Procurement Department, and a special working group was set to map out the major factors influencing the carbon footprint of food services that Turku provides. These include heating the buildings, kitchen equipment, electricity consumption, transportation, and share of vegetarian food, and of course food loss, which is very important. And with this data, it was possible to develop new meals, new recipes, and also the whole process in a way that the life cycle carbon impacts are decreased. For example, adding more vegetarian meals and reducing beef. That's one means to achieve this goal. And you can read more about the examples from our web pages. And I think we shall move on then. And please welcome Riikka Leskinen, Director of Valonia. The floor is yours, Riikka.
Hello, everyone. As Nina said, my name is Riikka Leskinen. I'm the director of Valonia. Valonia is the expert organization for municipalities in the southwest Finland region. And we help the municipalities, the 27 of them, in the subjects of sustainable development. And we are situated in the Regional Council of Southwest Finland. And you can go forward. As we heard of the good practices that already take place, we see that all of them actually bring together a number of stakeholders within the region. And in fact, when aiming for circular economy, the municipal boundaries are often too narrow. Therefore, we need to identify the region's potentials, not only natural resources, but also know-how, material flows, businesses. And when we are acknowledging these potentials, we have the possibility of strengthening the economy and self-sufficiency. But also we need to link the circular economy to other strategic goals. When we are aiming, whether we are aiming, for example, towards better quality of life or stronger businesses. So when we are talking about circular economy, we should not talk about only the material flows or the natural resources, but also about quality of life. All municipalities, whether they are in urban area, rural areas, they have diverse strengths and potentials, and the regional approach identifies the best synergies. As the Mayor Arve said, regional actors were involved in the consultations and in the Circular Turku consortium, and over 200 stakeholders have been involved in the roadmap consultations. And even more will be part of the initiatives that are part of the roadmap and our work in the future. So public sector is an enabler in creating those platforms and partnerships when we are actually pushing forward these actions and initiatives. And you can go forward. The roadmap is also the result of the collaboration across different levels of governance. During the process of compiling the roadmap, Turku was also at the same time leading the cities and regions working group during the compilation of Finland's strategic program for circular economy. And therefore, we benefited from the learnings from other Finnish cities and national actors. And these processes went on at the same time, so it was very beneficial, I think, for the national perspective, but also to the regional perspective. And finally, the roadmap was developed in close collaboration with ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, to ensure the interventions planned in the roadmap were inspired by international best practices. So we are collaborating in the local level, in the regional, national, and even global level.
Thank you, Riikka. Thank you for pointing out the meaning of the collaboration. It's definitely vital for the transition. Then we move on to the second part of the webinar, Institutionalizing the Circular Economy. Next slide, please. All right. Well, the roadmap, it centers on the 5 priority topics, and the selected topics have the high potential to promote systemic shift towards resource-wise society through circular economy solutions. And these 5 priority topics, they were chosen on the basis of an analysis carried out by the Circular Turku project steering group in fall 2019. And for each priority topic, a working group was gathered consisting of various stakeholders. Our speakers today have been involved or have been leading these consultations over the last 2 years, and they will present the results today. Next slide, please. Thank you, Samir. And here a quick look at the city roles, the diverse roles that the city can play to enable circular economy. The roadmap aims at encouraging businesses and research organizations and also to the residents to participate in the circular economy. And in most cases, the interventions presented in this roadmap, they will be most successful if it's implemented with multi-actor collaboration. And this is why each intervention involves the City of Turku playing both either a direct role, for example, by setting a regulatory framework, or a more indirect role, like facilitating action with other actors. Next slide, please. Then we will focus on each of these 5 priority topics. As I mentioned, our speakers today have been involved or leading the consultations to select them. And first speaker will be Antto Kula from Turku Energia. Welcome, Antto. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you very much. It's nice to present the first topic, meaning energy topic today. And my name is Antto Kula, coming from Turku Energia, which is the power and heating utility in City of Turku. Next slide, please. And as Risto already in the beginning showed some figures, I will come back to the figures now. Why to focus on energy system? It's a big consumer of fuels, and because of that, big changes can be made as well. As an example, there is on the right side shown the decrease of CO2 emissions in energy sector in 5 years, and it's 2/3 of the emissions have been reduced already. However, there is still work to be done, and in the next slides will be presented some highlights how to continue the work. Next slide, please. The first highlighted area in here is the smart management and optimization of energy systems. In here, to take up some examples of actions to develop new services for demand response and also for energy efficiency promotion. That is the first action to be highlighted here that has been developed in the working groups. And the second action that was taken up as a very important one is to establish an expert network in the area to discuss and also brainstorm further the ideas how to develop the energy area further on, as it's this one, as the others, is including many viewpoints. Next slide, please. Then the second highlighted area here in the energy area is the waste heat utilization. There is, at the moment, for sure, there is some waste heat as an excess from both the industry, the service businesses and households, and how to get this waste heat into use. That is the first issue here, how to map and identify where the waste heat is available, and on the other hand, where it can be used. And important issue here is the district heat network and how to bring that to the next generation, so that the district heat network is important for the reason that if the waste heat is produced on the other side of the city, how it can be then transferred to the other side of the city and utilized there further on. Next slide, please. Then, as the third one, points to be highlighted in the energy area is the households and communities, how these should be supported to be an active part of the energy transition. And in the work group, we saw that the first important issue is to still raise the awareness of the opportunities, how households and communities can participate, and on the other hand, how to activate and show real-life examples how others have already made efforts in this direction. Next slide, please. And here as the last one, you can see on timeline some actions that Turku Energia has done in this area already and what is there to come during the next years. Thank you.
Thank you, Antto. Thank you very much. And then Riikka, are you all already ready to show the circular food system, what it's all about?
Of course, I'm ready. Yes, so let's go forward. The next slide. Yes. So from energy to food, and why are we focusing on food system? Southwest Finland is the most significant food producer in Finland. And of course, food system is a self-evident part of the circular economy palette. Actually, 20% of the places of business in Southwest Finland belong to the food chain, and also 50% of the revenue. So it is also a big livelihood in our region. We have the widest range of different products in Finland, and we are, for example, front runners in producing and refining plant proteins. So we have a good reason to say that we should focus on food systems, and that we are the most significant food producer in our country. Food should be produced sparing and appreciating natural resources, and that is a challenge that belongs to all of us. At the same time, food is one of the most concrete themes of circular economy. It's about the nutrients flow, and it's about our very everyday life. You can go forward. So 5 interventions have been identified to be the core of the circular food system in the Turku region. First of them is growing the market for resource-wise food. I will go very briefly to each of these interventions since we have a brief time, but I hope that you will go to them more closely later on. We need to find targeted support for the market of the resource-wise food and food products. For example, in 2029, we hope that the professional kitchens and restaurants in the Turku area prioritize local resource-wise food products. And some examples of the action are the procurement criteria. As Minna said earlier, some criteria have already been investigated and taken into action, but we still have a lot to do to have more local food and resource-wise options in the public procurement. We also need to facilitate regenerative farming projects access to finance so that they receive the needed funding to make the investments and push their work forward. Next slide, please. So the second intervention is the reconnecting residents to food production. And actually, this is something that we come up over and over again. We need to have a better understanding of the food chain, where food actually comes from, as well as the importance of soil health and biodiversity, and how these questions link to each other. Some examples of the actions are, for example, in the urban context, we need to develop farming programs, including community gardens, for example, green areas and cultivation on city premises, so that also in the urban areas, the link to food production is clear. But also, we need to integrate food education more strongly in the school curricula as early as possible. Next slide, please. So the third intervention is reconnecting good users with food producers. So we are hoping, well, we are planning to establish food hubs in the form of both physical spaces as digital platforms, so that the good users can directly link to the food producers, which also reconnects the residents to food production. But also we need to provide businesses and marketing trainings, to local food producers, since if there will be more food hubs and different types of ways of purchasing food products, they also need business training, marketing training, so that they adapt to the transition. Next slide, please. Also, one intervention is that the canteens will be leading the circular food system transition. As I already said about the procurement criteria, it is very essential part. But also we need to further develop monitoring tools for food products. And also we need to, as a form of regulation, we need to cooperate to influence also national school meal regulations, and to have dialogue also, for example, about the meat quantities for public menus. But also, of course, we need to have very good cooperation, so that we are not pushing the discussion so that all the actors and stakeholders are not involved. So we want to still continue very wide cooperation with all stakeholders. And then next one. And this is the fifth intervention. We need to diversify and increase food value. And it means that the raw materials and side streams should be processed in a multifaceted, efficient, and innovative way. We need to invest in the processing of raw materials and byproducts, and we need to facilitate cooperation between variety of food actors at the regional level, as well as in the national level, since the geographic boundaries are not we need to jump over the geographic boundaries when talking about circular food systems and raw materials, and how they are moving around in our country as well as in Europe. I think this was about the circular food system.
Thank you, Riikka. Thank you so much. Very interesting, and lunchtime is approaching. I can feel it. Okay, then let's go to water systems. Unfortunately, my colleague Mika Merettoja wasn't able to join, so I will present the water systems to you. As Samira, could you pull with the next slide on? Thank you. Okay, why we focus on water system, I think this is obvious, that because the water is fundamental to all living things. And at the local level, of course, the various urban services and industries are based on water systems, like the sanitation and energy and agriculture. They depend on the water. And resource-wise, water systems recovers nutrients and heat from the water and aims to prevent that the pollutants are entering the water bodies, like the natural water bodies, especially. In Turku, we are also focusing on urban runoff and stormwater management because the risk the problematic events increase with the climate change, and they are really a risk to all infrastructure of the city. Next slide. Well, in Turku region, the water is managed through the very extensive cooperation with regional actors and municipalities, and it's very cross-sectional. And the operational model supports synergies among water, food, and energy system. And actually, one of the examples that I presented in the very beginning is a good example for this. And the examples of action I point out to the mobilize and the manage. When we ensure the regional land use planning that can support the health of natural water bodies, and then we can make sure that we have clean drinking water, for example. The next slide, please. As I mentioned, this urban runoff is really important thing here, and we in Turku we prioritize the nature-based solutions and innovations that enable these streams to be managed and utilized locally. Stormwater management is primarily implemented through organic landscaping and other landscape drainage solutions too. So this reduces the need of the clean water and decreases the amount of stormwater in the network and improves the overall condition of the water bodies. And one example of the actions is that we mobilize, we communicate that Turku's objective, including the nature-based runoff management and the co-benefits of that. So, all the regional water system actors are aware of it, and we all have the same direction for the future. The next slide. So there's opportunities to use this urban runoff and also the grey water, and we haven't definitely yet maximized the potential. But that could really lead to reduction of the need of the clean water, and there are other co-benefits also. One example would be demonstrating these co-benefits, like piloting, for example, and to show how the reusing of runoff water, for example, in the city green areas, watering, that could be one good example how we should implement this. And the next slide. There have been efforts to produce and make water data very widely accessible, and we have to work on it more. That's very important, since to have this knowledge base, because the residents and private sectors would have a better understanding about the impact of their activities. So the example of action, establishing a comprehensive water data management system in public sector areas to allowing the access to this data by open data interfaces would be one good way. But that's all about the water, and then let's go forward with the buildings and constructions, and presented by Reetta Huhtinen from Turku Science Park. Welcome, Reetta.
Thank you. I'm a network manager at Turku Science Park, and we are the regional development company, and we help the companies to grow in our region. I come from the clean team, and we help the bio and circular economy companies to grow our region. And we facilitate also the smart chemistry park activities, which was mentioned earlier on. We have there circular and bioeconomy companies, the growth companies in that cluster. Next slide, please. Why we focus on buildings and constructions? In Finland, 25% of the energy consumptions is caused by the living of the buildings. And 15% of the generated wastes originated from the construction or demolition of the buildings. And 30% of the carbon footprint in Finland comes from the using of the buildings. And I think it's interesting that from this carbon footprint, the 76% comes from the energy used in the buildings. And for example, heating and electricity, which is used during the lifetime of the buildings. And only 24% comes from the construction activities. And in this 25% carbon footprint, it includes also the materials used during the constructions. As next, please. We have identified 4 different topics, and I will go first. I will take some examples or ideas related to all of these topics. Next, please. When we start to think the rethink part, if you think in the old days, how the kind of the infrastructure and buildings were developed, I think the money was the most important thing when we did the decisions. But nowadays, and even more in the future, we have to also take into account the carbon footprint and also the circularity of the materials. For example, how we can include the carbon footprint and circularity in the procurement criteria in the future. I think that's a very important thing that we have to work for in the future as well. Not only make all the decisions made based on money, but also the environmental and circularity has to be taken in the decision making. Next, please. Then, when we start to rethink about the energy, may I have the next slide, please? We have to think the energy in the new way, as we heard already from Turku Energy today. So we have to start to think about the renewable energy and the green energy. For example, the solar energy and geogen energy. And that's quite understandable in the new buildings. We have to focus on those because most of the footprint of the built environment comes from the energy used in them. So we have to focus in the future even more on the renewable energy sources. And whereas in the old buildings, at the same time, we want to kind of expand the lifetime of the buildings and at the same time increase the energy or enhance the energy efficiency of the old buildings. So that we have to do some actions also related to the old buildings as well when we want to make the lifetime of the buildings longer. We have to take the energy sector as well into account. Next, please. And here I would like to lift up once again the planning. Next picture, please. I think a lot of work will be done during the planning stage, and it's very important to take the circularity and the carbon footprint into account early in the planning. For example, when we think about how we use our land in the cities, we have to think about the circularity of the soil, for example. And that is one very important thing. And last year in the City of Turku, the mass coordinator has started her work, and the main focus will be to coordinate the soil masses which are generated during the infrastructure building. So it's very important to circulate those materials as much as possible, and that is also a very good way to decrease the carbon footprint. Next, please. And then final thing which I will lift up is the piloting. May I have the next slide, please? I think the recovery of the materials is very important when we think about the demolished houses. And nowadays, like most of the demolished material is concrete, and I think it's circulating quite nicely. This kind of concrete is used in the road building, but there's a lot of many different kind of materials in the buildings, and those should be circulated as well. For example, we have started a project where we focus on ceramic materials and try to find out the high-value products made out of these circulated ceramic materials. So I think these kind of the recycling of the materials from the building demolition sites, many materials are still on piloting stage. So we will learn from pilots, and then we will be able to take them into broader use. And in this piloting stage, I think it's very important to understand the volume of the recycling materials and the technologies which are needed, as well as, of course, the carbon footprint has to be calculated, and also the legislation and regulation has to be taken into account. And then final but not last one is the value creation for these circulated materials. That has to be taken into account as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Reetta. Thank you so much. And the fifth priority topic would be the circular transport and logistics. And I welcome Stella Aaltonen from Mobility Services to present this. Welcome, Stella. Floor is all yours.
Thank you, Nina. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you here. I'm talking about the circularity in transport and logistics. Next slide. I think it's very self-evident why the mobility and transport are one of the focus areas in Circular Turku plan, because I mean it's 30% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from the transport sector, and the road traffic alone is 23%. But it also has a very close ties to all of the other areas of the circular economy, as you have seen before already. Next one. In the Circular Turku plan, we have focused on 4 different aspects of the circularity, and the first one being the reducing the need for move and prioritizing active mobility. And in here, we are especially focusing on walkability, looking at the public services and cycling. And what we have been doing for the past years is looking into how do we plan more accessible walking and cycling routes that are also safe for the users. And what we are preparing currently is a walking and being program for the City of Turku the first time. And this will be addressing especially the walkability issues. Next one. And the second sector is making shared mobility the new normal. City of Turku is known for mobility as a service solutions that are gathering a lot of users. And what we are focusing currently on this topic is providing real-time data for operations and especially for parking services. We are looking into how the current data that we are having as a city and providing that can be more used to optimize the service chains and also the usage of the different services to make it really attractive and easy to use, I would say, as a summary on that one. Next one. The third sector is one back. Thank you. The third sector is supporting the resource-wise logistics. This is an area that is having more and more to do with looking into how the last mile logistics are dealt with. How do we ensure that we have as green logistic chains as possible, and looking at how the new technologies can support the logistics to improve the operations. What we are focusing currently is looking at how do we as a city take a role in the logistics sector, and how do we ensure that the delivery operations are procured so that it allows the green logistics chains to develop further, and how do we support the different consolidation strategies. What we are about to start is developing a sustainable urban logistic plan for the City of Turku. The next one, thank you. And the fourth sector, which is not the least sector, is actually resource-wise tourism. And Turku really wants to focus on that the travel and tourism are all done environmental friendly and as resource-wise as possible. And this means that we would need to shape the tourism sector and enable also the green tourism to develop really. And what we are doing currently on this area is facilitating cooperation between travel service providers in and around Turku and looking on the different viable options that we have to improve the green tourism to develop in our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you very much, and thank you all the presenters. And I hope you are still able to stay on the line up to the Q&A session in the very end. I hope we meet there again. But then we transport us to the next topic, which is an overarching topic focus on the lifestyles. And Lotte Sukari will be presenting this to you. Welcome, Lotte.
Thank you, Nina. So now let's take a look how we have been promoting sustainable lifestyles here in the city of Turku during the last years. So next, please. So first, some background to this topic. Carbon footprint of an average Finnish person is 10 tons per year, and in Turku it is 8.4 tons. And this consumption-based emissions has been calculated per resident very recently. And if we want to be living 1.5-degree lifestyle here in Turku that matches the goals of Paris Agreement, we need to decrease the carbon footprint quite a lot, as you see in this picture down. And these emissions are connected to personal choices and values and the opportunities we have in our lives, such as what I choose to eat, how and where I'm choosing to live, and what kind of transport decisions I make in my everyday life, and what I'm consuming, and so on. Next slide. So these consumption-based emissions are quite tricky to point as a city. But however, we made a campaign around it last year, 1.5-degree life campaign, and it's ongoing still. And the idea of the campaign is to encourage citizens toward climate-friendly lifestyles. And through positivity, we wanted to emphasize that it's not about giving up things. Instead, it can bring health and well-being and better life quality, and maybe also new business opportunities. Okay, next slide, please. So here you can see pictures of the campaign. So who took part in this campaign? There were the City of Turku, the whole organization, and the Turku Group subsidiaries, meaning the companies that are owned by the city or partly owned by the city. And each participant had a small climate advice or tip directed towards the citizens that are written inside of these hearts. Unfortunately, it's in Finnish. But they made news and social media posts around this topic that we were also sharing in our city's channels. And here, for example, there was Visit Turku that promotes tourism in the area. They were saying that prefer locally produced or support your local. Library was promoting that we should favor borrowing and circular and sharing economy. The city housing company was sharing tips on how to save energy on heating of your home smartly. And water company was giving tips on how to save water and so on. So we got quite nice big range of tips for the citizens on how to live climate-friendly lifestyles. And in total, 19 different organizations or actors took part in the campaign. Next slide. Thank you. So here are some examples of the citizen engagement during the campaign. For example, up in the left, you see a screenshot of the Turku's Instagram page. We had a video competition for young people on social media, and we were asking them to share videos on how to live climate friendly. Then on the right upper corner, there's picture of a climate game that we made for workplaces. This was kind of less serious, but however, in the game, you needed to do everyday climate actions, and then you could get closer to the end of the game or the goal, and you were playing this as one group in the workplace. Also, the regional waste management company had a bus campaign about recycling, and here they are saying that with 1 kilogram of bio-waste, they can make 100 hours of energy for a cell phone with circular economy. And then we also made stories about climate-friendly persons living in Turku and how their sustainable life would look like. And we had an exhibition of them in a local shopping mall. And also there were several challenges, such as shower challenge for student in the student village. It's a student city, Turku. There's a lot of students here. And then there was house heating diet for some citizens and so on. Okay, so finally, this work in citizen engagement in climate action is ongoing and continues, and we actually need to find new ways to encourage people in sustainable lifestyles. But also as a city, we need to provide these sustainable solutions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lotte. Thank you so much. Very concrete examples of the citizen engagement and really nice work here. And I think we are moving to the next part, which is which has a lot of in common with the Lotte's presentation. We need to ensure the fair and inclusive circular transition. So the next slide, please, or is it even the one after that? Thank you so much. So in Turku city's strategy, it's emphasized that the current and also the future residents are really offered ways to participate and influence the city services and decision making. And similar goal is also in the Turku's climate plan. And now that we are making the transition towards circular economy, it's really vital to ensure that the transition is fair and inclusive, and all residents truly benefit from the living in the city that is resource-wise. And I really liked what Riikka earlier and Lotte said, that we need to discuss the quality of life. Well, Turku has worked with ICLEI to map the social equity impacts of the interventions into 5 priority topics. The equity as a concept was first separated as 3 dimensions that are access, participation, and opportunities, as I showed in the slide. And this way, it's much more simpler to communicate the social equity, which is a rather difficult or large concept, with different stakeholders. And in the future projects, we want to design them in a way that they increase the equity across the city. And to do this, we need the guidelines of the social equity for new circular economy projects. And this is what we are working on in the present Circular Turku project with ICLEI. And we want to empower the residents to be active, for example, in creation of new circular economy services, and for example, using them also. And we need to actively participate the residents in dialogue with us to share their ideas and initiatives, and to tell what kind of prevents things go forward. And this we are actively working on at the moment with our partners in Valonia and ICLEI. Next slide, please. And actually, the other picture, I have to say that this room with the chairs and tables and nice decoration, it's from the questionnaire that we sent to via the Voice Your Opinion platform, Kerro Kantasi platform, and one answer was about how a household is activating its residents to do a lot of different things that help to, so not everyone has to buy tools or has to buy a kitchenware for the parties, for example. There's a lot of innovations to share and to help also each other, and that also creates the feeling of community makes it stronger. And well, that's one aspect. But the jump from the circular economy roadmap to very concrete concrete actions involves that we have to unpack the roadmap's interventions with the regional stakeholders, including businesses, community organizations, and NGOs. And the city is collaborating with these stakeholders to establish the roles and responsibilities to make the transition true. But that's from my part, and now I'm really proud and happy to let Makasen from ICLEI, Makasen Naido, to present the next section. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Hello, everyone. Makesh Naidu, Head of Circular Development at ICLEI's World Secretariat. So as we've seen in the past hour, Turku has some dedicated people who are leading in many aspects of their work. I think what makes Turku even more remarkable is the manner in which the technical and political sides synergize, including stakeholders. This is vitally important for an effectively functioning city, or even country for that matter, where each cog in this machine needs to play its part efficiently and effectively. And I think in this regard, we can definitely learn another valuable lesson from Turku. If we go to the next slide. Thank you. So in addition to Mayor Arve being a driving force of circularity in Turku, Mayor Arve is also a vice president of ICLEI. So this means she plays an international leadership role in the realm of sustainable urban development. And this is to essentially more than 600 experts that ICLEI has based throughout the world, working in more than 125 countries, and with more than 2,500 cities. So Mayor Arve must be really passionate about our planet, because she also holds the global executive political portfolio of circular development. So from this regard, all of the learnings from Turku is shared with the rest of the world. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. The role that Mayor Arve and Turku plays in the circular development space is vitally important. Just speaking broadly, it takes thousands of hours to become an expert in a particular area. So with our limited time that we have to address all of the climate emergencies, it then becomes vitally important to shorten the learning time of cities throughout the world. And this is an area that Turku is actively involved in as a leading city, to co-learn with the other cities, to share best practices that can be adapted and then adopted. Specifically, I'd like to draw your attention to two initiatives. The first being the European Circular Cities Declaration. And this was led by ICLEI Europe, where Turku is a founding signatory. And I believe the declaration now has more than 60 signatories across Europe. The declaration essentially establishes the importance and commitment of cities in transitioning to a resource-efficient, low-carbon, and socially responsible future. So the declaration lists 10 priority aspects that range from establishing circular objectives, developing enabling environments, and then obviously monitoring and reporting. The second platform I'd like to draw your attention to is one that we launched just over a year ago, and this is called ICLEI Circulars. It's essentially the first global platform that supports peer learning and access to circular economy resources to local governments worldwide. And again, here Turku plays an integral role as a leading city, with a lot of the learnings and resources developed being shared with the other cities globally. So I think maybe in the interest of time, I stop there and hand back to Nina. Thank you.
Thank you, Makash. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the cooperation. It's really enjoyable, of course. And now, yes, you can share your questions in the Q&A box. And also, I think we have time for live questions here too. We're not that much late from the schedule. So if you should have if you should have questions, please, you can raise your hand, and I will try to look at here if there's any hands up. And I can see that we also have our presenters here online still for the questions, if you wish to know something more. I don't see any at the moment, but I will give a little time. No? Okay. So perhaps this is it then, unless someone is, I will still check if it's not easy to see all at once. Well, I thank you for your attention and joining the webinar, and I also thank all the presenters and also the facilitators and ICLEI and all our partners for great collaboration. And since there are no questions, I think we can end the session here. And this session, as it was recorded, will be available online. And if you can, please share it to your colleagues and the people who might be interested. It can be looked again from YouTube later. So thank you all from my behalf, and have a very good week ahead and the spring.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.